today with Jake Wilcox, who is the Omni-Channel Solutions Architect at Geisinger.
Yes.
Jake, welcome to the Technology Reseller News podcast.
Thank you.
So, your title seems pretty self-explanatory, but, first of all, you are a nice customer, first and foremost. Yeah. Would you first and foremost tell me what you do, and then we can get into that relationship aspect?
Yeah, sure. I think what is an easy way to think about it is I take complex business processes and I help design what that optimal solution is going to be.
Sure.
Specifically, for right now, customer experiences.
Sure.
How do we take what our patients' needs are, which can be very complicated in the healthcare sector, and how do we simplify that to an Amazon-type-like experience so it's not painful for them? That's ideal.
It needs to be consumable, right? I mean, I think a lot of times, omni-channel, right? I mean, we're talking about multi-channel experiences that have specific outcomes in mind. Mm-hmm. So, from a healthcare perspective, rather, what are you doing in that regard? I mean, I can think of the obvious things. Doctors take a lot of notes, right? So automate it, make sure they do the final review, and that's one component. Yeah. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of other things that go on.
Yeah, so my realm is more on the customer experience contact center type side, right? Not so much on the clinical side. But for omni-channel, it's really how do we make that experience make sense? So right now we're just implementing voice, but we're looking at each step in those flows, where does it make sense that maybe we can inject a little chat, or maybe we convert them over to SMS. Right? Does it make sense? Or maybe if they start on our website, can we convert them to a voice? Do we need to?
Yeah.
Omnichannel to me does not mean you have to be omnichannel. It just means you have options. And if you are going to use those options, it better be seamless.
Yeah.
It better be, the context has to pass through all the right information. You can't just do whatever you want in one channel and say, oh, now you got to call us. Now you have to re-authenticate. Now you got to oh, come on, no. Yeah. Like I was just chatting with your bot. It already knows who I am, right? Or I started on the phone. I got to go, right? Can we continue this over chat, right? I can't talk anymore. Yeah. Can we do those things?
Yeah. It needs to be a seamless experience as you suggest, which I think that's what a lot of people or organizations are trying to get to eventually. Right. But if I have nothing in place, or if I have some outdated IVR in place, what then is my first step?
Start with your bread and butter. That's what we're doing. We're starting with voice. Right? We're not necessarily implementing omni-channel right away. There are some parts that have that, but for the most part, it's just voice. We need to get that right. And then we can say, hey, where are the friction points? Where are the opportunities? And go from there.
Walk me through an implementation scenario for, let's say I'm a hospital, right? And I have this. I just want to start with appointments. Just want to be able to get someone to book appointments via voice and text. What's that process like? What do I have to think about just to even begin the process?
So I think that's where you also have to look at your own EHR and your own vendors, right? Sure. Some of that stuff is already baked in, right? So you also don't want to reinvent the wheel. What do you have existing? And then from there, where are the gaps? So you have to start with where you start. You can't try to get to some end state that's not really achievable because it doesn't actually mesh with your current EHR. That's the core of your business for healthcare, right? Even if that means changing your EHR because you don't want to deal with it anymore or you want to switch, whatever it is, but you have to start with your foundation. What data do you want? What information do you want? What workflows do you want? It's easy to get caught up in the end state, but the journey is just as important. Just like we're trying to optimize journey for patients, you have to optimize your journey to get to the right journey experience for your patients. If that makes sense.
Yeah, and you work in the contact center space rather, so you know very well, more than most people, is that the experience starts well before they actually make the call. They're talking to your AI, your chatbots, or what have you, right? So, if I want to ensure that experience is seamless, I would need to then start from the potential outcome that I want to achieve. But a lot of people, I think, sometimes they set the wrong goal in the beginning. So how do you go about defining those goals those outcomes that you actually want to achieve?
I look at it as, if I was doing it, what would I want?
Yeah.
If I'm calling into a company, healthcare aside, any company, I want them to know who I am. I want them to know any interactions I've had with that company. And I want them to be able to handle things that I could want to do with that company.
Sure.
So, in healthcare, you need appointments. You might need prescriptions.
Yeah.
You might need to talk to a doctor, talk to a nurse, any of that stuff. But you also want them to know all of the history. So from my side, on the contact center side, I want to know what contacts have we've had with a patient previously, and how do we provide that context to our system so it's smart enough to recommend things, or maybe even to adjust how it goes about a conversation. Something we're looking at right now is our outreaches.
Sure.
We do a lot of outreaches for our patients. We want to remind them that their appointment's upcoming. Or maybe we want to tell them, hey, you got something, maybe schedule a mammogram, right?
Sure.
Like, how do we make sure that when people are calling us back, for whatever reason they might be calling us for, if we can offer some context up to the system to say, hey, we already reached out to them about these other things, but maybe they didn't realize that's why we reached out to them. Maybe there was an issue with the outreach. So it happens, right? We look at it, it's about 5% of our inbound calls. People come and they say, I don't know why I'm calling you. I'm just calling you.
Yeah.
So how do we make sure the system can propose something to get them to the right spot? A big metric that we like to use is how many calls fail into our general skills. How do we minimize that? There are calls that we might intentionally want to send there. There's also a lot of calls we don't. And that's a good example. I don't know why I'm calling you. So, all right, well, we know we outreached you for this, that, and the other thing. Let's prompt them and say, hey, these are some things that maybe you might want to consider. Do you want to tackle any of these right now?
Yeah.
No? Okay, we'll get you to an agent, and they can look a little deeper, sure. And that's something we have not implemented any of that. But that's something that we're looking into. How do we get to those things? So when you're looking at goals, start from the basics. It's not, healthcare is complicated, but it doesn't have to be complicated to come up with goals. If you start with the very basic things, then you can, all your sub goals can be those complicated workflows. Okay, how do we make that happen? Okay, that's a bigger conversation. That's a lot more. That you're dealing with the integrations, you know. So you got to start with the simple stuff first.
You know, I often think that just trying to ensure that everything runs smoothly, that context flows throughout the entire organization. It's one of the most difficult things. It's assuming that all systems are firing on all cylinders and talking to one another.
Right.
And that's one of the biggest challenges that we face in the AI era. You know, if I'm wanting to ensure that is the case, you know, how do you pull that off? How do you actually make sure that I already spoke with the IVR, they have my information, they know who I am, they know my age, they know my sex, they know my whatever information that they've gotten from me.
Yeah.
Shouldn't be repeated when I speak to a human. So how do you ensure that actually happens?
So we're not using agentic AI at the moment, right? So I can't speak on how to specifically do that. But if we were to implement that, there's a lot of guardrails that have to be put in place. For not just because it's healthcare and you're dealing with a lot of sensitive information, but because you want to make sense. Just like if you were to call a store that you bought a product from and it's saying an order that you have no idea it's talking about, that could be dangerous in healthcare. You could indicate, hey, you need this procedure. Just kidding. This is not something the doctor asked of. Whoopsie, right? Or you have this appointment, you missed it. Whoa, I didn't have an appointment, right? So how do you structure it in a place where you put those guardrails in place? Trust but verify, and then verify your verification. Because those systems, especially with the agentic ones, as you kind of dive into them a little bit, they have some guardrails in place, but it's mostly just telling the AI not to do something.
Yeah.
Does that mean it didn't do it? No, not necessarily.
Yeah.
And the threshold of tolerance is probably a lot lower for healthcare than it is for some other companies. Can't speak for them all. But you have to evaluate that and then see how do you address that.
I wonder if you can walk me through just briefly this relationship. I mean, obviously you're a customer, but is there sort of a process in which they, being they, will hold your hand, walk you through these processes, give you the trainings that you need to make sure that you're sort of armed with the right tools? I just want to understand sort of that end-to-end journey. I'm assuming that it's ongoing, of course, but just even getting started for that matter.
Yeah, I think it's a learning journey for everyone, right? NICE has to learn our business just like we have to learn theirs. So I don't think that ever goes away.
Yeah.
You can try and get ahead of it as much as you want, but there's always going to be ramp up. Honestly, in any project, let alone an implementation, there's always going to be ramp up of resources, of learnings. You can try your best. And that's what I would recommend. Learn as much of the NICE products as possible, and then provide NICE as much context as possible.
Yeah.
Or third-party partner, whoever you're using, so they can help you. Yeah. You're the experts in your business. They're the experts in the software. But there's not going to be much overlap. So the bridges have to be met in the middle somewhere. And it requires that good partnership to be able to sit down and talk about it and address those concerns.
Full circle talking about partnerships. Jake, I really want to thank you for your time and thank you for joining the Technology Reseller News podcast. We're here on day one of NICE World 2026, and stay tuned for more coverage.
Awesome. Thank you.